Led Zeppelin were an English rock band, formed in London in 1968. The group consisted of guitarist Jimmy Page, singer Robert Plant, bassist and keyboardist John Paul Jones, and drummer John Bonham. The band's heavy guitar-driven sound has earned them recognition as one of the ancestors of heavy music, though their unique style drew from a wide variety of influences, including folk music. First up is Robert Plant. He was born 20th August 1948 in West Bromwich, Staffordshire, England. He was a British rock singer and songwriter, best known as the vocalist and lyrics for the band Led Zeppelin. Inspired at a young age by Elvis Presley, Plant left school to begin his music career. He performed with a number of groups before he was discovered by Jimmy Page, who was in search of a lead singer for a new band he was forming, called the New Yardbirds. The group eventually became Led Zeppelin. Plant launched a solo career in 1982, reuniting with the band for occasional benefits. In 1977, Plant experienced a great personal loss. While he was away on tour in the United States, his 6-year-old son Carrick died from a viral infection. Sudden and unexpected, Carrick's death hit Plant hard. He cancelled the rest of the tour, and Led Zeppelin stopped for a year and a half. Plant now moves back and forth to live in Texas and England, where his family is. He moved around quite a lot, but is currently back home in England. One track on the album, Turn It Up, speaks of being lost in America and turning into someone else. In the end, he said recently, he felt he had to return in order to find out how much he'd valued England and what he'd left behind. Second, John Bonham, also known by his nickname Bonzo, is celebrated as being one of the greatest rock drummers of all time, remaining a constant source of inspiration to the generations of drummers since his work in the rock band Led Zeppelin. He was born 31st March 1948 Redditch, Worcestershire, England, United Kingdom, and he died 25 September 1980, aged 82, Clewer, Berkshire, England, United Kingdom. He spent most of his youth in Birmingham, England, and left school in his mid-teens, and for a time worked for his brother's construction company. He played in his first band, Terry Webb and the Spiders, in 1964. Subsequently, he worked with a multitude of bands, mostly based in Birmingham. At this point in time, Bonham was one of the most sought-after drummers in England. This is when Led Zeppelin came and swooped John up. After a successful career with Led Zeppelin, John, on September 24, downed somewhere near 3 dozen straight shots of vodka in just a few hours. He died in his sleep later that night. This effectively ended Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page is best known as the one who started Led Zeppelin and helped them to hard rock dominance in the 1970s. His work with Led Zeppelin made him one of rock's most important and influential guitar players, writers, and producers. Page is now aged 71, born 9th January 1944 in Heston, Middlesex, England. Page grew up in working-class West London and took up the guitar at age 13. He learnt to play mostly by teaching himself. When Eric Clapton quit the Yardbirds in 1965, Page had an opportunity and replaced him. He joined the band on several singles, including Happenings 10 Years Times Ago and The NASA Blue, and along with his bandmates, had a cameo in the classic Michelangelo Antonioni film Blow Up. When the Yardbirds fell apart in the summer of 1968, Page quickly formed a new band called Led Zeppelin and recruited 3 members. They toured the US in early 1969. Their first album was released in February, and within 2 months it had reached Billboard's top 10. The second album, Led Zeppelin 2, reached number 1 2 months after its release, and ever since, every album of new material has gone platinum. Lastly is the bassist and keyboardist John Paul Jones. He is currently 69 years old, born 3rd January 1946 in Sidcup, Kent, England. His father was a pianist and arranger for big bands like the Ambrose Orchestra. His mother was a singer and a dancer. From an early age, it was hard to imagine John not getting into the show business. As a youngster, he learnt the basics of piano playing at the family's home in Eltham. Then he started taking organ lessons and was soon playing at his local church. While attending Christ College boarding school in Blackheath, he turned to the bass. He quotes, "I couldn't even play a 6-string acoustic guitar when I started. I was just fascinated by bass work generally. I used to turn up the bass on my records and listen to the runs, and in time I just picked it up." After he left school, he attended an audition for ex-Shadows Jet Harris and Tony Meehan in early 1963. Tony Meehan remembers, "We had a single called Diamonds at #1 at the time, and we were putting together a band. John Paul heard about it and showed up. He was just about out of school, very young and a bit nervous. Despite the nerves, he was a good musician and he knew his stuff. He was cocky too in a certain way, and I liked it, so he hired him." After joining the band for a while, he started arranging his own music, and by the summer of 1968, John Paul Jones was highly respected by fellow musicians, though completely unknown to the public. He very nearly joined Terry Reid's new band, but then he heard that Jimmy Page was putting a new group together, and so the rest was history. Led Zeppelin mostly did songs in the genre of hard rock or blues rock. A specific example of hard rock was Stairway to Heaven. An example of blues rock was Black Dog. The song Rock and Roll was first released as the second track from the band's fourth album in 1971, with a guest appearance by the Rolling Stones pianist Ian Stewart. Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page has said that this song came to be written as a spontaneous jam session, which the band was trying to and failing to finish the track, Four Sticks. Drummer John Bonham played the introduction to Little Richard's Keepin' Knockin', and Page added a guitar. The tapes were rolling, and 15 minutes later the basis of the song was down. As the title suggests, the song is based on one of the most popular structures in rock and roll, namely the 12-bar blues progression. Rock and roll was a key component of the band's set list at Led Zeppelin concerts from 1971 on. Initially, Plant referred to it on stage as "It's Been a Long Time," which is the first line of the song. In 1972, it was elevated to the opening number of all concert performances, and it retained the status until 1975. When the song was initially released in the early 70s, music lyrics were being created that were representative of the popular method of protest and social change. Music is a common way of expression, and during this time, artists and groups took the most of their popular music by expressing viewpoints on present issues. So we can say that the music of the 70s represented the culture and was greatly influenced by events and beliefs of the 70s. In Led Zeppelin's case, he expressed his culture and the beliefs that they had by music such as rock and roll.